Today is the 16th anniversary of Transformers Animated's series premiere. Last year, I released a video called Animated Season 4 What Could Have Been, which outlined all known information about the cancelled 4th season of Transformers Animated and cleared up a number of misconceptions. In the time since, so much new information has come to light, including a document full of never-before-seen episodes, and just 10 days ago, another document with extended information we've never heard. An update is in order. New episodes, new art pieces, new first-hand accounts from the creators. This is Animated Season 4. What should have been. By now, most everyone has seen the episode premises from the Allspark-Almanac. We'll forget those for now. It's time to go back in time. Animated Season 3 wrapped production in spring of 2008, and as the episodes went off to be animated overseas, the show's core creative team of head writer Marty Eisenberg, supervising producer Matt Youngberg, and art director Derek J. Wyatt expected a 4th season renewal to come in the fall. Of course, it didn't. In May of 2009, when the 3rd season had nearly finished airing, they received official word that Transformers Animated would not continue, as Hasbro shifted its TV efforts to the hub and the aligned continuity.
Would you be able to confirm a Season 4 of Transformers Animated?
I can't confirm or deny right now. Hasbro's supposed to say something about it fairly soon.
However, in the year-long wait for a renewal, Hasbro asked Marty, Derek, and Matt to toss around some ideas for the potential 4th season so they could get the ball rolling once the green light came. The team believed that Megatron and Earth had run their course in the narrative, and their initial vision for the season was set largely on Cybertron. Black Arachnia would shift into the main villain role with a growing Predacon army, all while Megatron would pull the strings from within prison, Hannibal Lecter style.
Megatron was kind of played out. To continue to have him be the uber villain and continue to lose would just continue to water him down as any kind of real threat. It just felt really repetitive and not interesting as a character to have him, be this sort of manipulative genius who keeps failing. Originally, we really didn't want him to have as much of a physical presence in the season at all. It probably would have been closer to how he was played in season 1, where he was very, very limited by what he could do, and then maybe by the end he would have busted out.
We now have the document that Marty Eisenberg compiled and sent to Hasbro. In 2013, Derek shared it with his friend Heather Morgan, who shared it with me in late 2021. Derek preferred this over the ideas that would come later. The core narrative of the season would have revolved around Optimus and Sentinel's power struggle in the absence of Ultra Magnus, while Megatron turns Sentinel into his puppet to control from the shadows. Earth becomes a Decepticon target when Energon deposits form around Detroit following the Allspark's reconstitution. Black Arachnia decides techno-organics are superior, grows an army, and sets out to steal the Allspark to release a techno-organic virus that'll turn all life into techno-organics, not realizing it'll zombify them as well. Prowl's spirit lives on from within the Allspark. Omega Supreme struggles to fit in on a Cybertron that'd rather forget him, and RC becomes Sari's Cybertronian educator. The first episode premise, which many fans have been familiar with for over a decade, is the Trial of Megatron. And who's the only Autobot sleazy enough to defend Megatron? Why, Rattletrap, of course. Naturally, the big public tribunal is Megatron's idea, which he feeds to Sentinel, who relishes the opportunity to overshadow Cybertron's new hero, Optimus. The whole thing turns out to be a big distraction for a new Decepticon attack, masterminded in secret by Megatron from behind bars, which Optimus and his crew just barely managed to thwart. This could easily be expanded into a big 2 or 3 part movie. Yeah, I bet it could. We'll talk more about the Trial of Megatron soon, during a later iteration of the season where it took a more final form. From here, the episodes are presented in no particular order, starting with Mirror, Mirror. Optimus and crew attempt to transwarp back to Earth, but end up in a mirror universe where Autobots are evil and Decepticons are good. Inspired by the Transformers convention BotCon's 2008 theme of shattered glass, Animated's creative team broke ground on this episode during Season 3, where an outline was written by Tom Pugsley and Greg Klein under the title Strange Reflections. However, it was cut from the lineup when Cartoon Network requested a 3-part season premiere, and Pugsley was reassigned to Human Error Part 2. This sticky note sketch was the only visual asset dating back to the episode's production, though Shattered Glass Sari was barely featured and not developed in this original outline. The concept was placed on a back burner for an eventual 4th season, now renamed after the classic Star Trek story of the same name. Derek was a huge fan of the Shattered Glass concept. Around 2011, Derek discussed ideas with Heather Morgan, including an army of Sparkplug hounds patrolling Sumdax Detroit, Tutorbot emotionally brainwashing Sari, and evil Sari building her own Bumblebee to have as a friend after seeing how much our Bumblebee and Sari care for each other. In 2020, Derek and his friend, IDW comic book artist Josh Perez, colored Shattered Glass counterparts of just about every Transformers animated character. A full archive of all of Derek Wyatt's Shattered Glass ideas can be found in this video right here. This piece by Oreo Glitch showcases the evil Autobots from Derek's designs taking orders from an evil Sumdac beneath the towering Sumdac Terror Drone. While this one depicts a long-awaited battle between Sari and her Shattered Glass counterpart in the burning halls of Sumdac Tower. What a tangled web we weave! In which we learn how Black Arachnia fell in with the Decepticons in the past, and how she adds to her ranks of techno-organic Predacons in the present. The episode's named after an old stanza of a Scottish poem, "Oh, what a tangled web we weave, when we first practiced to deceive," which is very fitting given the episode would have shown how Black Arachnia first practiced to deceive as a Decepticon. We know the creative team never decided which specific Predacons would join Black Arachnia's ranks, as those conversations were never had in the lack of the season's production. They also never discussed if we'd have seen more of this Beast Wars-inspired locale from the end of Predacons Rising. Maybe we would have, maybe we wouldn't have, it just depends on what they would have decided while writing and breaking the episode.
Honestly, it was really meant to be more of a gag than a serious plot point. So we never really gave it much thought. Did we pitch something for season 4 where we would go into the
I know.
Beast
I think
realm
I was
or bring
one of
her
the people.
back from the Beast realm?
I kept on referring it to as like, oh, she's in the Beast Wars world now.
Yeah.
And it was in the ether at the point, but we didn't agree on anything because we just never got there.
A misconception is that Inferno and Antagony, as well as gold-colored Black Arachnia, were planned for the 4th season of Transformers Animated. This is not the case. In 2011, BotCon released a number of recolors and retools of pre-existing animated figures as new characters, accompanied by a tie-in story by Marty Eisenberg. By 2015, another story was planned which would follow Black Arachnia in the depths of Cybertron. A page was included in the complete Allspark Almanac to promote the story, but this fell through when Hasbro retracted BotCon's license in 2016. These were simply going to be BotCon recolors, and weren't conceived until many years after the show wrapped production. The only reason these characters shared Waspinator's body was as a means of plausibly getting them a toy. Had they appeared in the show during its production in 2008, they certainly would have had original bodies. Case in point, Derek designed a body for Skybite in 2008 with an alt mode and everything. But when it came time for a BotCon story, he simply reused Lugnut's body in the hopes of plausibly getting a figure. That's all it was. In addition, Antagony's presence is just paying homage to the history of BotCon, seeing as they introduced that character as a convention exclusive. It's pretty unlikely she would have been considered a candidate to be a Predacon during the show's actual production. On this note, while we're here, the BotCon stories The Stunticon Job and The Return of Blur were never ever gonna be episodes of Transformers Animated. They were specifically created to be script readings, their story points determined by the available voice actors and the toys BotCon wanted to make. There were no plans for Blur to return within the series itself.
I don't know that, I mean, when we were planning out the season 4 that never happened, I don't know that we had any plans to,
He didn't come up
to show him up.
To bring him back?
He didn't come up.
I also asked Marty another question at the audience's request, which is would Black Arachnia and Waspinator have reverted back to their non-techno-organic forms by the end of the series?
Probably not. Didn't have specific plans for how we wanted them to end up, but I liked the idea of this of Black Arachnia assembling this techno-organic faction that would challenge Megatron and sort of complicate things for the Autobots as well. So I think I probably would have kept them in those forms.
This piece from Decepticon-Aiden showcases Megatron approaching Black Arachnia on Arca 7, offering her a tantalizing choice. S.T.E.A.M. On Earth, a radical group of paranoid vigilante technophobes who believe Sumdac's robot revolution and the coming of the Autobots spells the end for humanity, S.T.E.A.M, which stands for Save the Earth and Mankind, decides to fight back before it's too late with steam-powered, clockwork-driven, Jules Verne-inspired technology. Think Wild Wild West meets Steam Boy. Giant dirigible battleships, steam locomotive tanks, etc. Unfortunately, they quickly run afoul of Soundwave, who's obtained a new minion or two, which only fuels Steam's anti-tech paranoia, until the hated Autobots are forced to come to their rescue. In the original pitch bible for Transformers Animated, Marty Eisenberg spitballed several ideas for human villains when the show was more of a superhero story than a traditional Transformers story. S.T.E.A.M was actually among the very first villains ever conceived for the series. It appears Marty copied a large chunk of that episode premise directly from his pitch Bible, where actor Charlton Heston was described as inspiration for the group's leader, G.B. Redmond.
You have not yet obeyed the Lord. Let my people go.
Had the group made it into the series, plenty could have changed. For example, Prometheus Black and Meltdown were originally conceived as two separate characters, Meltdown being an assassin for hire alongside Colossus Rhodes and Stiletto. Plenty could have changed, and plenty would have changed with Season 4. It was never discussed who Soundwave's next minions would be. Derek expressed much admiration for Ravage over the years, and while designing Rat-Bat, he designed several of Soundwave's other 1986 cassettes, along with a head for a Rumble/Frenzy. Derek stated in the past that he really wanted Soundwave to reunite with Megatron eventually, and this episode seems like a prime candidate for that to have happened. This piece, from Derek's friend and IDW comic book artist Josh Burcham, showcases a battle between S.T.E.A.M and Soundwave, featuring designs from Alex Cabrera. Land of the Minicons. Another space bridge mishap transwarps Bumblebee to a planet populated by tiny transforming sentient robots, where he is considered a god. Lots of Gulliver and Lilliputians imagery. Minicons' presence in the animated toy line was a request from Hasbro, and this episode was their earliest proposed showcase story. While I don't have much else to share, this episode is magical to me and I can immediately see its potential. This piece by Oreo Glitch showcases Bumblebee, praised by his ecstatic and loyal subjects, not knowing what's about to come. Total devastation. Assuming we're okay to do combiners once the second movie comes out, Dirt Boss and the Constructicons will discover a new way of becoming the big boss of Detroit, and gain control of his powerful new energy source known as Energon. But the Constructicons find some serious competition in the form of female Starscream, who sees controlling the Energon as the key to her future of leading the Decepticons. The Autobots will need some help from their old ship Omega Supreme to settle this explosive clash of the Titans. With the exception of a sketch of Devastator's head, one of the earliest things Derek drew while working on the series, Devastator was never designed and his remaining members were never decided on, though Derek did post a sketch of Bone Crusher's head in 2021. He consistently stated that he wished for at least a few more members to round out the team.
I'm not exactly sure. We didn't quite get that far working it out. There was, we're definitely going to add at least 2 more Constructicons.
However, according to Eric Siebenaler and Marty Eisenberg on multiple accounts, it's unlikely that this would have occurred due to Hasbro's resistance to produce a combiner toy.
A $50, $60 toy was not something that they wanted to commit to at that time.
Yeah, I think there were a few decisions that sort of got nixed economically, but we still kind of pushed them story-wise just in case.
Yeah.
Like we were
Constructicons.
planning to do a combiner with the Constructicons.
Yeah.
And we always left room for it. But ultimately it just was going to be too expensive.
Well, yeah, and it was always in flux because of whether or not we could do Devastator or some limited version of Devastator. We didn't want to get too far down the road with it just to have them say, no, we can't do it.
What does remain universally consistent across all accounts, though, is that Bulkhead was planned to be the unwilling centerpiece of Devastator.
The idea was that Bulkhead was an unwilling part of Devastator. Dirt Boss and the other 2 Constructicons, plus Bulkhead, made Devastator.
And then there was sort of a secondary element that was part of Devastator unwillingly.
A common misconception is that Skipjack would have been a part of Devastator. Animated Skipjack was a recolor of Erector, a joke character introduced to the continuity in 2011 based on a G1 Micromaster. This image, commonly misattributed to the Allspark-Almanac, is from issue 59 of the Transformers Collectors Club. The gag here is that head toy designer Eric Siebenaler is pitching a 7-foot-tall Micromaster should form the entire lower half of Devastator, which Matt, Marty, and Derek aren't too keen on. This mock-up is clearly modified from Eric's own, making it interesting that this wasn't in the almanacs if they had it. In addition, up until 2010, the notion of a Constructicon named Skipjack simply didn't exist. Derek didn't even remember this character in 2019. Skipjack would not have appeared in Transformers Animated Season 4.
Someone had come up with a sketch, it might have been Eric, of how to incorporate the 2 Constructicons, Dirt Boss, and Bulkhead into something like Devastator, but not quite as elaborate.
Eric was kind enough to share it with me for the first time, but in his own words, it's kind of lame. Is it entirely possible that had the show got a 4th season, it still could have gone and went without Devastator appearing?
Probably. I think that is a likely scenario.
The implication that Devastator would go toe-to-toe with Omega Supreme all but confirms mass changing was the intended idea for animated Devastator, which one could probably infer from the scale of Jetfire and Jetstorm compared to Firestorm. The scale of Devastator in this sketch by Derek Wyatt from a later document we'll discuss also solidifies this notion. However, there are countless clips of Derek saying he wanted the Dinobots to fight Devastator, indicating the idea for the final battle may have changed along the way.
Were there any plans to further round out the Dinobots or the Constructicons?
Yes, for both. And then they would fight to the death.
We wanted to do Devastator first, and then finish the Dinobots and have them go to war.
Will we have seen any more Dinobots in season 4?
Possibly. We talked about that with Devastator, yeah. Oh, that's right.
We had plans to hopefully finally finish off the Constructicons and do Devastator. Yeah. And then finish doing the other Dinobots. I wanted to have 6 Dinobots total. So I wanted them to fight to the death. Well, Sludge and the other Snarl, and then a Velociraptor type honorable, Dinobot.
As I present more clips of Derek speaking post-show, I need to bring something up. Although it's not as much of a source of confusion now that we have so many official documents, one very important stumbling block I've noticed, which has made my efforts very difficult in trying to learn about the 4th season, is that Marty and Derek often had directly contradictory statements. For example, when I showed Marty the season 4 page of the Transformers Collectors Club issue 71, which Derek created himself, Marty had this to say.
Some information on there that's just wrong. This was not in any of the documents. I don't know where it came from. I don't know what your source is. So I think over the years, the legend has grown as to what actually was season 4.
At TF Nation, Marty said they never figured out what Sari's origin was going to be, while Derek Wyatt said this in 2010.
Everything about Sari, we know. We know her past and we know her future.
Derek stated in 2019 that Lockdown was a Decepticon prison guard before he became a bounty hunter, a notion that Marty had never heard of when I ran it by him.
Yeah, that wasn't anything that we had specifically planned, but as I kind of leafed through the old documents, I don't recall that we had a specific Lockdown story.
The source for many of these inconsistencies is that Derek never stopped thinking about the show and adding to the story in his head.
Especially when Fun Publications, when we didn't know Fun Pub was going to stop doing that. Derek and I had ideas, the idea that we get to pitch doing quote unquote season 4. And because of that, he was thinking of a lot of ideas after the show had ended that definitely he probably wasn't talking with Marty Eisenberg about, because, it's him talking to me and a couple of friends while we're watching Food Network or something.
As such, it's very important to keep in mind that while Marty's statements about a 4th season are always rooted in a strong memory of the discussions and documents from 2008, the mythology of Transformers Animated never stopped expanding in Derek's mind, and many of his statements and descriptions from the years beyond the show may or may not reflect actual discussions that were had when the show was in production. This piece by Josh Burcham showcases a battle between Slipstream and a Derek-inspired multi-Constructicon Devastator, designed by Alex Cabrera. Bumble Prime. The mysterious Time Trucker shows Bumblebee a potential future where he is an Autobot leader in a devastating war, in which Autobots and Decepticons fight side by side against zombie-like Predacons, the result of a plague that was spread through a techno-organic virus, think World War Z, which the Autobots must prevent Black Arachnia from unleashing in the present. The episode was originally pitched for the 3rd season, though Marty recalls it may have been cut when Human Air was expanded to a 2-parter. What Marty's description doesn't mention is that Galvatron was to lead the Decepticons in this distant future. Derek was particularly passionate about this story when he spoke about it during TFCon 2010, which is why Josh PEREZ volunteered to render some pieces and fulfill his vision.
We were going to do a flash forward episode where you just get thrown into the future, and they were going to talk about it being post-Unicron Wars. Galvatron was ruler of Cybertron. And I had this mental image in my head of Cybertron having like a third of it is gone, and he's sitting on a throne in the center of Cybertron, and he rules Cybertron at that point in the future after the Unicron Wars, which we would have skipped. All of that would have been skipped. We were just kind of go around the whole Unicron thing. His head probably would have been floating around Cybertron, but we didn't want to repeat the movie or try to outdo the movie.
The designs for Galvatron and Unicron come from Derek Wyatt himself. Revealed years after the series, but before his passing. He mentioned his dream casting for Unicron and Galvatron would be Maurice LaMarche and Zachary Quinto, respectively. Heather also clarifies that Derek was inspired by the GoBot homeworld of Gobatron in his mental image of the ruined Cybertron.
That's the one thing I like about the, like I said, the books that we've done, Geek Spark, and it was like a Japanese, just a TFA fanzine. But the Geek Spark one was Derek showing a lot of what he wanted to do in the series. The Galvatron would have been the Galvatron he introduced in the series. So that design is, while it's not canon, that would have been Galvatron's design.
We had always wanted to do a time travel episode, and it goes back to even season 1, where a number of characters were developed because they were named after Hasbro executives. So Angry Archer was Aaron Archer, Slow-Mo was Samantha Lomo, and we had one for Steve Drucker, who for some reason they were calling the Time Trucker. And so we constantly were trying to find, well, what's the Time Trucker episode? But that was the idea of bringing in the Time Trucker to do this flash forward episode.
And with that, I do have to issue a correction to the previous video where I stated the Time Trucker would have been a human supervillain. But based on Marty's description, can you blame me for coming to that conclusion? Last week, he was kind enough to give more information about the Time Trucker. I don't think we ever got as far as deciding whether or not the Time Trucker was a human, Cybertronian, or sentient Trukk. Since we never got to do a story with the character, we never really ironed any of that stuff out in any concrete way. He was to be mysterious and Twilight Zone-ish, Vanishing Hitchhiker meets Steven Spielberg's Duel, with a touch of DC's Phantom Stranger.
He is beaten. Let your devotion to justice temper your rage.
And it was always to be in question whether he was a human, Cybertronian, or sentient Trukk. Sort of our version of It's Pat.
If you think it's a man,
Pat, I'm in a towel.
If you're positive it's a woman, it's Pat. The movie.
What I adore about Marty is he'll say, oh, we never figured out any specifics, and he'll proceed to give the most vivid, specific description you've ever heard in your entire life. Another piece by Josh shows Bumblebee caught like a deer in the headlights of a bad mother trucker. Get it? Get it? I came up with that. I came up with that one. Actually, Josh had basically finished designing him as a human supervillain, and then Marty came in and gave that feedback, and Josh had to start from scratch, so that's on me. I didn't realize I was making an assumption, but I was. We know that Sari's future self was intended to have a slight redesign in this story.
I don't think she was going to have any more physical transformation.
The only thing I can think of is I think we did talk a little bit about if we did that flash forward episode, maybe she was a little bit different than that.
Oh, right.
But not.
Right.
Derek Wyatt sketched Bumble Prime on various sticky notes, though we've been unable to locate it. However, Derek repurposed the head design as a proposal for Bumblebee's appearance in Transformers Prime, simply adding some lines and details. During a conversation I had with Aaron Archer, he recalled immediately that Bumble Prime may have had a hammer as his weapon of choice. This piece by Josh depicts Bumble Prime and future Sari fighting side by side for the fate of Cybertron. Both designed by Alex Cabrera with colors suggested by Josh. Keep in mind, Derek did draw a body for this guy, but we cannot find the sketch. Marty's seen it, Heather's seen it, they don't have it, Eric doesn't have it, Aaron doesn't have it, Josh doesn't have it, which leaves me with no real leads to pursue. It came from Cybertron. An Autobot with an important message for Optimus comes to Earth, scans a flying saucer from a cheesy B-movie set, then suffers a memory loss and comes to believe he is an alien invader called Cosmos. Hilarity ensues. This episode was pitched in season 2, 3, and now 4, but kept never getting made. This piece from Oreo Glitch features the Autobots hot on the trail of this mysterious extraterrestrial invader. How you gonna keep him down on the Energon farm? Seeking refuge from the ugly Sentinel vs. Optimus for Magnus politics on Cybertron, Bulkhead returns to the Energon farm where he grew up, with fellow Autobot Rubes, Jetfire, and Jetstorm for some much-needed peace and quiet. Only to discover the farm is a target for a raid by the Energon-depleted Decepticons. Marty Eisenberg is the only person who would title an episode of a children's show designed to sell toys after a 1919 World War I song.
How you gonna keep them down on the farm after they seen Harry? How you gonna keep them away from Broadway, jazzing around and painting the town?
This piece by JEETDOH showcases Bulkhead, Jetfire, and Jetstorm making their final stand against the encroaching Decepticons. This sounds like a really wonderful team up, and I'm sad we never got a chance to see it. Jetfire and Jetstorm are using the powers showcased in their animation models, which never made their way into the series. Arachnus Prime. The Time Trucker gives Optimus a chance to correct his past mistake of abandoning Elita 1, but he becomes a techno-organic spider/robot amalgam instead, thus changing the present so Elita 1 now leads the Autobot team. This piece, from series head toy designer Eric SIEBENALER, showcases a dramatic reunion between Autobot leader Elita Prime and the terrifying mutant spider Optimus. He was also kind enough to design formal models of both of these characters. Predacons Unite. 2-part season finale. Black Arachne and her Predacons attack Cybertron, and Sentinel forges an unholy alliance with Megatron to quash the techno-organic menace. But Optimus realizes Megatron is playing the Predacons and Autobot sides against each other, so he and his Decepticons can take over Cybertron. You can tell from the very vague description that the events of this episode would have been determined by the previous episodes of the season.
And then maybe by the end he would have busted out.
This piece by JEETDOH features Megatron, Sentinel, and Black Arachne fully confident that they're in control. Who will prove correct? So why had we never heard of that batch of episodes? Because Hasbro rejected that premise. They were not looking to heavily invest in Beast Wars characters back in 2008. Hasbro rejected a story about an army of zombie Predacons attacking Cybertron and forcing the Autobots and Decepticons team up to stop them. Just a mere 4 years later, they released a story about an army of zombie Predacons attacking Cybertron and forcing the Autobots and Decepticons to team up to stop them. It is one funny company. Hasbro required Megatron and Earth to remain in the forefront to maintain brand synergy with the Michael Bay movies. To take that one step further, Hasbro wanted Jazz and Ironhide to join the main cast. They also requested Optimus and Megatron get upgrades worked into the story in a major way. This draft was forgotten as it was iterated upon. Jim Sorensen, writer of the Allspark Almanacs, had never heard of these documents, and that's because Marty Eisenberg had completely forgotten they existed when giving Jim assets to write the almanacs. Let's take a brief hiatus to mention some obscure episodes that were discussed earlier in the show's production that haven't made any publications. Trukk versus Munky. This was spoken about by Derek at various conventions despite having very little development.
Okay, so Optimus Prime, we were going to have the Black Arachne experiment that was a clone of Optimus Prime that kind of went wrong, Marty reminded me the episode name was supposed to be Trukk versus Munky.
Marty clarified that Trukk vs. Munky was never discussed as an episode for the 4th season, nor was it ever seriously considered when it was discussed during season 3. This piece by Sean Montague showcases Black Arachne revealing her newest creation in her lab, featuring an Optimus Primal by Alex Cabrera, with a head rooted in Derek's fan art from the 90s. And now an untitled episode which would have focused on Agent Simmons, Sector 7, and Metalhawk. At Auto Assembly 2010, Derek spoke about plans for Agent Simmons and Sector 7 in the series.
We had plans for new human characters in season 4. We were going to do Sector 7 type agency, and would have a specific agent who was a relative of some cameo characters we had in the show.
On Twitter in 2021, he provided me with a developmental sketch of Agent Simmons. He was drawn alongside Czar, who appeared in season 3, implying this did date back to the series production.
Metalhawk being a pretender was something he wanted to do in the series. He wanted Metalhawk to be like, because he was talking about Sector 7, and he wanted them to have a Twin Peaks vibe, and Metalhawk would have been completely Twin Peaks vibe. And he would have had a tuxedo. There's a picture of him in the Geek Spark fanzine where it's like you see the Pretender shell, Metalhawk, and you see him in like a human form where he has like a black suit. In his mind, Sector 7 was going to be more along the lines of like the Men in Black in a sense. He was going to bring someone to voice Metalhawk specifically. That main dude that we follow, I think that's who he was thinking of. It would be like some of a lot of the other voices, like not a recurring role, so that way they could put the budget towards the guest star or something. I don't know how that works. A lot of it felt like it was fleshed out during the show before they realized they weren't going to get a season 4. It's just like if they got a season 4, I think it probably would have been a cut episode of the list that they have. But it seems like it was something that he wanted to do. I want to say I remember him saying that he wanted to put these characters in an earlier season, Simmons or Metalhawk. He wanted them to be in an earlier season, but which makes me think that he's had this Metalhawk character specifically going on for quite some time in his mind. Probably at least early on in the show. Yeah, I know for sure he said he wanted to introduce him having a slice of pie at a diner. Yeah, and he was going to be like kind of quirky. He was going to be a little, he was going to be a little bit like, I hate saying Twin Peaks, but Twin Peaks, very much. The guy that did Twin Peaks is
David Lynch.
David Lynch. He was supposed to have a very strong David Lynch vibe to him, but we talked about the personality and that he would still be a pretender, and that was going to be like a reveal at some point. But that's pretty much all I remember.
And lastly, an untitled Halloween episode. Aaron Archer mentioned this concept to me, an homage to an episode of Batman the Animated Series, and said there was artwork for it and everything. However, he asked me to withhold speaking about it so he might have an opportunity to discuss it on his podcast, The Toy Armada with Aaron Archer. I'll gladly concede and let him do so. Before we continue and look at the next document, an important thing to keep in mind is that there aren't necessarily Season 4 plans, there are Season 4 ideas. This was a proposed roadmap, but it could have changed at any point due to Hasbro's brand and toy needs, Cartoon Network's broadcast needs, or simply the creators having a better idea.
I think we went through a number of iterations of what Season 4 might look like, none of which I got paid for, by the way. It was an evolving thing. I mean, even what I would call the final document was still something that was going to be subject to change. I think Season 3 is a perfect example where we started to do a season a certain way and we got 3 episodes in and then they put the brakes on and we totally had to rejigger at least the beginning of the season.
For example, we all know a Season 3 that looks like this, but the original proposed roadmap when the season began production may have looked something more like this, with 4 entirely different episodes and the events of our existing season premiere occurring in the finale. Then a later iteration of this chart featured Devastator as the final threat of the season. Clearly a lot changed, and a lot would have changed with Season 4. However, let's begin the next leg of our voyage. Eric and Derek collaborated on the design for the Triple Changer Marauder Megatron. Eric also began early work on a Power Master Prime, not yet with Derek's involvement. Eric affirms my theory that this was very early and subject to much change. Derek drafted a new Earth mode for Ironhide, and at Hasbro's request threw together a potential new look for the characters inspired by the movies. Bumblebee's look here is literally just pulled from developmental materials. This is an earlier draft of his appearance before it shifted into his final design. Heather says that based on her mini discussions with Derek, he found it extremely unlikely these would have ultimately made the show. And we know the team was vehemently opposed to Optimus having this flame paint job.
Personally, I wouldn't have wanted to go full-on flames with Optimus or change Ratchet to highlighter color or anything. So, yeah, that wasn't my choice.
Marty reworked the storyline of the season, which would focus on Megatron slowly going insane out of desperation, teleporting his prison city of Kaon to Earth, and attempting to convert Earth to a new Cybertron.
If we have to bring him back to Earth, which we really didn't want to do in the first place, what's his motivation now? His motivation had always been to conquer Cybertron and restore Cybertron to its former Decepticon glory. So why the hell would he go to Earth? And so we just said, well, he goes to Earth because he goes mad. Just something happens that makes him insane. And that was really the only reason that we could justify him going to Earth and choosing to be a threat on Earth. And I think what we decided was, well, he's going to turn Earth into the new Cybertron.
The Minicons would serve as the security in Trypticon Prison. Optimus' upgrade would be a Power Master armor he'd snatched from Sentinel in the premiere, and Megatron's new Triple Changer form would be the final straw in his mental decline.
So someone pitched making him a Triple Changer, and then we thought, well, maybe there's something in the whole Triple Changer program that makes you go nuts, like Blitzwing. Like it's very unstable reprocessor, so that we could justify Megatron being this sort of savage killer. And I think also there was probably an aspect of maybe making him more like the movie Megatron, as much as you can discern any kind of characterization from that movie.
Across an unknown number of iterations, Marty drafted a new pass of episodes, cutting many Predacon-centric stories in favor of newly conceived ones designed to showcase Hasbro's requests. This document was later given to Jim Sorensen to create the Season 4 page of the Allspark Almanac 2, and was used by Derek Wyatt later to create the Season 4 page of the Transformers Collectors Club issue 71. After all this time, we have that document. Derek provided this to Josh when they were doing the Transformers Collectors Club issue. These annotations are sketches from Derek, which Josh later rendered in that final book. Though because Derek did the artwork for the Trial of Megatron, Josh never received page 1 of this 3-page document, but we can plausibly assume that it looks something like this. We're not missing much, because we know a lot about the Trial of Megatron, basically all there is to know. It was, of course, expanded into a 3-parter to appease Cartoon Network. At Hasbro's request, Marty Eisenberg wrote an early treatment for this 3-part season premiere. A treatment being a step above a brief premise and a step below a properly formatted script. After production ended, this outline sat on Marty's hard drive until the UK-based Transformers convention TF Nation reached out to him in 2019 to do something with it. Marty pulled strings and got the show's voice cast to record the treatment in character. While it was originally convention exclusive, the team at TF Nation was eventually able to publicly and permanently post it online during their online convention in 2021. With newly commissioned art pieces and character models / show backgrounds provided by Jim Sorensen. To tell you everything we know in this piece would basically include playing the entire 60-minute special, which I obviously won't do. Go watch it on TF Nation's channel. To give you the briefest rundown, the episode would have picked up with Optimus' team being praised as heroes after their capture of Megatron. After Prowl's funeral, and after Ultra Magnus names Optimus his successor in his dying words, Sentinel becomes increasingly desperate to prevent Optimus' rise to power, creating a Power Master armor and luring Bumblebee to his side with the promise of elite guard status. A bar fight makes Optimus look the hero and Sentinel look the fool. Sentinel's reputation is further damaged during a Power Master malfunction, while Prime's is boosted further after saving Moonbase 2 from a Decepticon attack. Ironhide is assigned to become Optimus' bodyguard, and during the trial, Rattletrap acts as Megatron's attorney to get him cleared of all charges. Megatron gravely injures Sentinel and teleports the prison city of Kaon to Earth, on top of Dinobot Island, in pursuit of the new Energon crystals which have sprouted around the city. Optimus gears up in the Power Master suit and his team pursues them, though Bulkhead stays behind on Cybertron. Rattletrap sneaks away on Earth, Bumblebee rejoins Prime's side, and Megatron sacrifices Shockwave, Lugnut, and Blitzwing into the reactor to power Trypticon, and the 4th season's new status quo begins, as no one's able to enter or exit the sealed city. In the outline, Sari returns to Earth with the Autobots. However, in the season outlines from the Almanac and Collectors Club, Sari remains on Cybertron with Bulkhead. This goes to show how loose and early the discussions of the season storyline really were. My understanding is that Sari remaining behind was the more recent and preferred idea of the story. The outline features 2 new characters named Tractor and Uplink. Eric provided their designs. While the outline mentions Obsidian leading Team Char, Marty confesses he may have gotten Obsidian and Striker confused in that draft, and if that's the case, it would have been corrected later. Derek's description explicitly mentions Striker rather than Obsidian, and it also mentions Sari training under Cup at Auto Boot Camp, which did not happen in the outline, with Cup not even appearing. It's fascinating to see that the idea of a Decepticon attack on an Energon farm, from how you're gonna keep him down on the Energon farm, has seemingly been folded into the season premiere now, just eliminating the need for that episode entirely. One last note is that this was a first draft. Hasbro never gave any of its mini notes or suggestions you know they would've. The differing order of the episode list between the Allspark Almanac and the Transformers Collectors Club was always a mystery to me. Did Derek change the order of the episodes after thinking more about the season story? Well, now we finally know that Derek pulled his episode order from Marty's list 1-to-1, meaning it was Jim who changed the order for some reason, maybe for composition. The fact that some episodes have shifted in order from this to the previous document implies there was at least some thought put into the order of the episodes. Mirror Mirror was originally the team heading to Earth after Trial of Megatron. Now it's way later in the season and it's Bulkhead and Sari's return. Now let's revisit these episodes we've heard so much about over the years in much more detail. Starting with Turf War. As Ironhide adjusts to life on Earth and Bumblebee adjusts to life without Bulkhead, the Autobots find themselves in the midst of an explosive turf war, when Dirt Boss and the Constructicons discover a new way of becoming the big bots of Detroit and gain control of this powerful new energy source known as Energon. But the Constructicons find some serious competition in the form of Starscream and female Starscream, who see controlling the Energon as the key to their future of leading the Decepticons. This episode is clearly total devastation, but with a new title and an added focus on Bumblebee and Ironhide. Starscream also explicitly gets mentioned. Why is he alive again? There was a deleted scene in Endgame Part 2 which would have seen female Starscream resurrect him. Marty says this was cut from animation when it started becoming clear to the team that a 4th season may not be coming, though it would have been added again had that 4th season come.
Would you have moved it to season 4?
Oh yeah, I think it's necessary.
It's worth noting that Derek indicated in a lost tweet that in hindsight, he would have liked to keep Starscream dead for a while after Endgame versus reviving him again right away. Hasbro put them in an interesting conundrum by making Bulkhead leave the main cast, because that throws their Devastator plans into disarray. There's no mention of him in this outline. Meaning they'd either have had to change their plans that they had for years, or they would have had Bulkhead come to Earth in just this one episode and then leave again, which might have created some sense of whiplash. Given Derek did 4 sketches of Devastator on this document, it seems clear that the Constructicons' final form was very important to him, even if Marty and Eric contest it likely wouldn't have happened. And let's throw in a nighttime version while we're at it, eh? Thanks, Josh Burcham. This is why I hate organics. Rattletrap, who managed to slip free of Kaon, finds himself on Earth surrounded by nothing but eek organics. He manages to scan a vehicle mode, an old Model T type jalopy, or alternatively, a Big Daddy Roth / Ratfink style hot rod, and quickly becomes a target for both the Autobots who want to arrest him and ship him back to Cybertron for questioning, and the remains of Megatron's abandoned minions, who need Rattletrap to access the impenetrable Kaon so they can take out the leader who betrayed them. After his brief appearance, and this is why I hate organics, Marty Eisenberg fell in love with the slimy character of Rattletrap, giving him a substantial role in the Trial of Megatron. This would have picked up after his disappearance at that story's end. Back at TFCon 2010, Derek indicated the Big Daddy Roth car was his preferred alternate mode.
Were there any plans of turning Rattletrap into an actual Maximum?
We're gonna bring him to Earth first and have him get an Earth mode. And we wanted to do like a Big Daddy Roth kind of hot rod car with, pipes and we wanted to put up like a rat logo on the side of his car. and then maybe, I think it was leading down that path.
Megatron's abandoned minions seeking revenge certainly seemed to be Lugnut, Blitzwing, and Shockwave, who Marty explained would have turned on Megatron after being thrown into the Kaon's reactor in the Trial of Megatron.
So I think the idea was that they were going to be a sort of a splinter faction that was going after Megatron because they weren't too happy about how he treated them. So I think the plan was to have Starscream recruit them.
This piece from Jason Smith depicts Rattletrap on the run as threats from all sides hunt him down. Jason was also kind enough to design an Earth mode for him. Now we circle back to Mirror Mirror. Bulkhead and Sari attempt to transwarp back to Earth and rejoin their friends, but end up in a mirror universe where Autobots are evil and Decepticons are good. This episode has now been reframed around Sari and Bulkhead, with the rest of the cast seemingly no longer visiting this alternate dimension. An interesting note is that Jim's account in the Allspark-Almanac 2 reads as though they're simply visiting Earth, while the document seems to imply they're permanently returning. Yet another piece by Oreo Glitch showcases Sari and Bulkhead standing triumphantly alongside the heroic Decepticon fighters, with a Shattered Glass Blitzwing by Josh Perez based on a knockoff Derek said he'd take inspiration from all the way back in 2009. Gremlins in the gears. The Minicons escape Kaon and cause all kinds of havoc in Detroit, sabotaging and disassembling all machinery they come across, including the Autobots. Ratchet has his servos full with his teammates falling apart faster than he can put them back together, but the team gets an unexpected assist from the technology-hating Fanzone. This episode's premise seems to be heavily inspired by the Gremlins movies, the same way Decepticonair is an homage to Con Air. We know from the Trial of Megatron that Megatron would have assumed full control of the Minicons at that story's end. We also know from Marty Eisenberg's comments at TF Nation 2019 that Megatron was intended to abandon his Decepticon followers and rely on his Minicon army as his primary soldiers. It's unclear if Megatron would somehow be behind the Minicon rampage. Derek designed his take on the Kaon Minicons in 2011 and actually requested the BotCon include them in their Stunticon Job comic. They are Highwire, Grindor, and Sureshock based directly on their Armada counterparts, Leader 1, based on the GoBots character, an OC named Mr. Ticklebottom who he used in roleplay on Formspring that Pete Sinclair renamed Ducky as a Wally homage, even though that's not what Derek intended, and Reach Out is actually based on Armada Longarm, but since a character in Transformers Animated already has the name Longarm, he was named after a 2010 toy called Reach Out, who was remolded from Cybertron Longarm. The Reach Out after which this is named did not exist when the show was actually in production 3 years prior, so it's unlikely he would have had this name. In addition, Hasbro may have had specific toy needs that could have altered their designs drastically, such as needing them to transform. After all, the proposed Minicon in the Power Master Prime mock-up was a bipedal mech, which Eric clarifies was just a presentation he threw together one day. The Minicon never had an identity, and may have been omitted from the toy or omitted from the show, based on whatever was best for the story they were trying to make.
All I really remember us talking about was just how goofy the Minicons are going to be. They were going to be very bumbling, because they're distressed. There's when I said they're distressed, something clicked in my brain, and now it's like flipping on a fuse and then they're knocking out again.
So they're working for Megatron at the end of Trial of Megatron. Do you know at all, like, he was gonna dispatch them across the city, or if they just kind of went rampaging on their own?
That's the thing that's like that's the fuse that's knocking off and on, is the reason why the Minicons, like what they're doing specifically. It's like an echo in my brain that's not being too loud right now. It's gone.
This piece by Oreo Glitch showcases Ironhide getting ripped apart by the rampaging Minicons in Detroit sewers, while this one features Ratchet and Fanzone making one dramatic final stand to fight the Minicons off. And now we return to What a Tangled Web We Weave, in which we learn how Black Arachnia fell in with the Decepticons in the past, how she was responsible for developing Blitzwing's triple changer mode and triple personality, and how she adds to the ranks of her techno-organic Predacons in the present. The Autobots respond to a series of reports of monsters that turn out to be the first wave of Black Arachnia's techno-organic virus. Meanwhile, Black Arachnia, Waspinator, and the Dinobots breach the depowered prison city of Kaon and renew her alliance with Megatron. Black Arachnia ultimately turns Megatron into a triple changer, giving him a powerful new tank mode.
I mean, I think it's common knowledge that Black Arachnia would have been the one to perform the triple changer surgery on Megatron. He basically gets Black Arachnia to do triple changer upgrade surgery, whatever you want to call it, on him, and then that would start causing him to go insane. Because it's a triple changer, and most people that have that technology put on them, it's a lot of stress on their mind, and I think that's where he starts. That's like the seeds of, like, I guess him being more berserker, I guess, more aggressive. Black Arachnia ends up playing a bigger role in Transformers with Megatron specifically, because of that, because she has all this knowledge on these upgrades.
To get around Hasbro's mandate, this episode was reframed around Blitzwing and Megatron. It would have retconned Blitzwing's triple changer capabilities as the source of his mental instability, and this would lay the groundwork for Megatron's spiral into madness caused by his triple changer upgrade. It's interesting to note that Black Arachnia would have continued to employ the Dinobots, and Waspinator would have stayed by her side. Also, note how the techno-organic virus plan still carries over into this newest version of the document, even if she's no longer its main antagonist. This piece from CHROMATROID shows Blitzwing trapped in a web as his life's about to be irreparably altered. At this point, we once again circle back to S.T.E.A.M. The description is completely identical to the previous version. According to Marty, this episode was cut from his most recent version of the production document in order to accommodate a 13-episode season. We don't have this document.
As the document evolved, certain stories got taken out. The Flash Forward, Trukk versus Munky, S.T.E.A.M came from Cybertron. Those were all ones that I think we had pitched in season 3 as well. So I think those were the first ones to get yanked when we had to develop other stories to conform with the concept that Hasbro gave us.
Now we're back at It Came from Cybertron. This description is once again identical, and this episode was also once again cut from Marty's most recent document. In Derek's abbreviated description from the Transformers Collectors Club issue, he omits the final line, which implies Cosmos isn't actually this character's name. We'll never know if Derek omitted this to keep that detail concealed, or if he just no longer liked the idea and cut it out. Triple Threat. In his new triple changer mode, Megatron proceeds to ruthlessly obtain Energon. Unfortunately, the triple changer mode has given Megatron an unstable personality to match. A one-bot army blowing away anything and anyone in his path, including Black Arachnia. The Autobots manage to put out some fires in his wake, but ultimately can't stop Megatron. Nor can they penetrate his impenetrable fortress of Kaon, nor can they figure out what he's planning to do with all that Energon. All they can do is wait for him to make his next move. Based on this ending, it seems that this would have been the first episode of Transformers Animated where our heroes lost. Cliffhangers and multi-parters aside.
Yeah, I think that's definitely got to be where we start seeing that big culmination of people realizing that they need to work together to stop them. he gets upgraded, he starts going crazy, and everyone realizes how big a threat he is now. I mean, he's always been a threat, but now he's got, you know, massive firepower. He's got all these capabilities, and it just becomes this thing where, all right, we got to stop him now. And then pretty much everyone starts joining in for that.
Yeah, they turn him into a Dragon Ball Z character and strengthen him.
This piece from KATZI showcases the Autobots and Decepticons joining forces and charging into battle against a common threat, Marauder Megatron. Derek stated on many occasions he wouldn't have colored Marauder Megatron gray like most fan art does, and would have gone for a Beast Machines inspired look. Josh Perez finally carried out Derek's vision. The Powermaster Prime is designed by Alex Cabrera with input from Josh Perez, finalizing Derek's take on the Powermaster armor, which is inspired by the Generation 1 Powermaster Optimus Prime toy. Let me issue one last correction to the previous video. Turns out this was Derek's preferred Powermaster head, while this head was only referred to as Prima Godimus, which Josh and Heather infer was inspired by Godmaster Optimus Prime. Given that Powermaster Prime and Godmaster Prime were the exact same toy, just renamed in different markets, I failed to register these were two separate designs and mistook it for one consistent design evolution. Derek was never fond of Eric Siebenaler's proposed mock-up of Powermaster Prime, but simply never got the chance to offer his input or alternate ideas before the team formally disbanded. Eric was thinking from the perspective of an engineer, wondering how he could take Prime's existing trailer and turn it into armor. Derek was thinking from the perspective of a fan, wondering how he could adapt previous incarnations of Powermaster Optimus Prime. Given their collaborative process for every character's designs, the final version probably would have settled somewhere in between. However, this Derek-accurate version will be used for all future art pieces. Allspark-Alypse Now. A revenge-obsessed Sentinel comes to Earth gunning for Megatron, armed with the Allspark, and planning to use it as a weapon to destroy the Decepticon leader once and for all. But Sentinel doesn't count on Prowl's dormant spark reawakening within the Allspark. Unfortunately, the ghostly Prowl is unable to communicate with Optimus and his crew to warn them. He must inhabit the bodies of various Cybertronians with Allspark fragments, Constructicons, Wreck-Gar, Starscream/clones, and ultimately Sari, to prevent Sentinel from inadvertently destroying the Earth with the Allspark.
Sentinel doing some shady things. The discussion is rattling pieces of memories now, and that one specifically, he's making a deal with someone for something.
Our facial expressions freak out at just the slightest, least significant pieces of information.
This piece from IDW cover artist Jar of Loose Screws depicts a Prowl-possessed Mixmaster revealing himself to Jazz and Ironhide. Well, this one depicts Powermaster Prime and Prowl-possessed Wreck-Gar rushing to stop a dire mistake. The designs of the Prowl-possessed Allspark fragment characters come from me. Process of Elimination. Bumblebee investigates a series of deadly attacks on his old boot camp platoon mates, including Ironhide, Bulkhead, Sentinel, and Bumblebee himself, who are being picked off one by one by a mysterious assailant. All signs point to Waspinator, or possibly Shockwave, but when they are also attacked, the mystery deepens. The assailant turns out to be Cliffjumper, who it turns out had a Trojan Horse program uploaded into him back in the boot camp as a precaution to erase all evidence should Shockwave be caught or taken offline. Now it's up to Bumblebee to stop Cliffjumper before he self-destructs.
I don't know if it was part of the episode or if it was a joke that Derek might have made about Mirage having the virus in him, and Cliffjumper being suspicious of Mirage because of the whole G1 thing.
This piece by ENZOMUS Prime showcases Bumblebee sprinting across Cybertron, flanked by shadows with dangerous intent. Now we finally reach the intended finale of Transformers Animated's 4th season. Megatron must be destroyed. 2-part season finale. Hopefully not series finale. As Megatron's plan to reformat the Earth into the new Decepticon homeland reaches fruition, unholy alliances arise between the Autobots, Starscream's Decepticons, and Black Arachnia's Predacons/Dinobots to take him out. Many casualties abound. Megatron is seemingly taken down. Several times, in fact, he's created duplicates as a distraction. Powermaster Optimus battles the real one and defeats him after a brutal battle, but Megatron manages to download himself into the city of Kaon itself, and the city is spreading, the result of a combination of Megatron's will and Black Arachnia's techno-organic virus. Sari discovers a deeper connection between her and Black Arachnia. Sentinel redeems himself, and Optimus defeats Megatron and saves the Earth once again. A fun fact is that, unlike what most Transformers fans might assume, this episode was not named after the iconic quote,
"Megatron must be stopped, no matter the cost."
Rather, Marty intended it as an homage to Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed to showcase how much of a monster Megatron's become. In Derek's account, Starscream is replaced with female Starscream, perhaps stemming from a desire to keep him dead. The other Decepticons in question are Lugnut, Blitzwing, and Shockwave, who would have joined Starscream or female Starscream's ranks.
It wasn't female Starscream who was in charge. I looked at my description for it, and it said Starscream. And maybe that was he had it in mind that maybe she was more the power behind the throne, and she was calling the shots. I mean, if that's what Derek wanted, that's probably what would have happened.
There's considerably less lingering questions now with all of this information. We don't know who the casualties would have been, and we don't know what Sari's origin may have been.
A lot of stuff Derek and I talked about with animated, I feel like he was very careful, because I mean, we were good friends, but I think he was very careful with what he said, because I don't know anything about Sari, well, about Sari's, or any reveals or origins or anything like that. He kept a lot of those close, just in case, and he would tell me specifically, just in case he got a chance to do something with these. He didn't want people to know too much. I don't remember the casualties of who they were. I'm pretty sure like we'd probably see a lot of Decepticons fall, specific ones. I feel like I remember him joking that because we didn't see Beachcomber die in season 3, we would have seen Beachcomber die in this episode. That one I don't remember too much of, because those were using, I think that was Derek's Marauder Megatron I colored. And we just basically used that for the thumbnails, and I think because we did that, we didn't discuss it too much.
This piece from Sean Montague, modified from an earlier work, showcases a battle to take down Marauder Megatron, Thanos style. And this piece from LYNDAXY showcases Power Master Optimus and all the allies you could gather, facing down Marauder Megatron once and for all. That's all we know in terms of proposed ideas for storylines. Marty says there were no specific plans for characters like Swindle, Meltdown, and the other human villains. They may have appeared, they may not have, although he does find it somewhat likely Lockdown would have made his way back into the story in some form.
Lockdown probably would have come back because he was such a fan favorite character, and Andrew Robinson always wrote him.
Derek also stated once that the Allspark Almanac is wrong, and Bludgeon was not designed for the 4th season. He just drew him for fun.
Other ideas? That was probably just more for fun. We had never talked about Bludgeon.
Marty has clarified there really weren't any plans for events past season 4 had they gotten a 5th green light in some crazy hypothetical scenario. There also weren't real plans for where these characters might end up. They enjoyed a flexible, creative process where ideas came to them as they came. So we have two very different season roadmaps here. The first version was preferred by Derek and Marty, and according to a poll I conducted, the majority of fans as well. Even with all this new tantalizing information uncovered, I can't see the Hasbro version of this season as anything other than Brand Need's stifling creativity. For Ironhide, a literal extra to replace Bulkhead in the main cast would be like if Forlom took Princess Leia's place in Return of the Jedi. Not a single episode even mentioned Ironhide beyond Turf War, so any protagonist roles he may have had, if any, would have been solely out of obligation rather than inspiration. Black Arachnia stepping into this villain role feels so organic, pun intended, and I have faith that Marty would have justified her heel turn as a character. The individual episode concepts are also just so much more compelling. For years we've known about Gremlins and the Gears, and I've just thought, I wonder what they would have done for that. But as soon as I saw Land of the Minicons, I wanted to see that story. I saw the potential in that story. It's more than just a curiosity, it's a desire to watch it. Although I am fond of Lugnut, Blitzwing, and Shockwave turning on Megatron, I can't help but feel like that still could work in the original version of the season as well, given how the original Black Arachnia story was still gonna remain stuffed into this one. So, it's amazing to stand here after 3 years and look at how much we know now. I set out at the beginning of 2021 to learn more about the Season 4 proposal because we had very little information from the books and I knew there had to be more written down somewhere. Derek was kind enough to give my email address to Marty, and Marty was kind enough to do an interview where he revealed so much information like Megatron's lieutenants defecting, the time trucker, the very concept of Bumblebee becoming a Prime, even the fact that the original version of the season would have had Black Arachnia as the villain and set on Cybertron. None of that had ever been known anywhere before. And now, to have not only unearthed an entirely different version of the season, but also the full plans for the later Hasbro version, is such a phenomenal feeling because we have, for all intents and purposes, all that was ever to know about the 4th season of Transformers Animated, unless there's another shock document that's been forgotten and we're gonna discover the existence of someday. I'm not hedging my bets. I think this is the end of the journey for me. And it feels amazing. To touch on the largest lingering mystery of Transformers Animated, what is Sari's origin? Derek said they knew it, Marty said they didn't.
I have an idea in my head of what Sari's origin is. I don't know that Matt and Derek were completely on board with it. And Hasbro didn't care because Sari wasn't a toy. So ultimately, Sari's origin would have been whatever the three of us agreed to, and I don't know that we agreed definitively. Or I don't know that I had convinced them.
We know it wouldn't have been related to Primus because Derek hated Primus. Marty denied a theory that had anything to do with Megatron. We do know now it's tied to Black Arachnia in some way. Marty did say this.
And I will say this, that if you think about it, the answer is obvious. I will say that if somebody correctly guesses it, I would probably say they are correct, or at least that they're wrong.
At the end of the day, Derek said there were only 2 possible ways he'd consider revealing Sari's origin.
What was her actual origin? Why was she on Earth? Why was she created with the Allspark and that? And
I'm only gonna answer that one of 2 ways. Either in fiction that Marty Eisenberg has written, or on my deathbed.
And now only one remains.
I really hope that we get to see animated come back beyond just having, references in Legacy or homages in Legacy. I'd love to see animated come back because that was something that Derek poured a lot of himself into. And even if it won't be Derek's animated, that I don't know. I think just to have it back out there would be nice, just to tell a few more stories. Derek's not here, but Marty's here. I don't know if Matt Youngberg would be excited to do something with that again, and it would just be nice to go in there every once in a while and tell a story, have an anthology, maybe have the funds to do an animated special. That's me. That's pie in the sky stuff.
Animated is one show that really feels like it belonged to somebody, like someone's art piece.
It very much feels like it's telling a story and not selling toys. It's great that he ended up doing Transformers Animated because it feels like that was like the whole thing, was he wanted to work up to touch Transformers at some point.
I'm so happy he did.
I am too.